A very good morning to everyone. I am going to talk about eligibility for premium IOLs. So we know that past 2 decades has experienced an evolution of cataract surgery from a simple removal of cloudy lens to moreover of a refractive procedure that provides higher levels of spectacle independence. And with this evolution, there has been a parallel increase in patient expectations. So cataract surgery is now poised to compete with refractive surgery, and with improvement in technologies has set new benchmarks. My slides are not moving. So some of the red flags for premium IOLs are, as we all know, that careful patient selection not only focuses on the thorough examination and biometry, but evaluation of the patient personality traits as well. So demanding type A personality, as well as it has been seen that patient with multifocal IOL implantation with certain personality traits like neuroticism are quite unhappy with the post-op outcomes. Patient unwilling to wear glasses after surgery or patient unwilling for any surgical enhancements are not at all a good candidates. People with job requirements at night or low light conditions like airline pilots, truck or taxi drivers, astronomers are not able to tolerate glare and halos and should be excluded. It is indeed imperative to rule out the presence of a prior ocular surface disease by a careful history taking, evaluating the prior history of any presence of surface disease, any ocular prior surgeries, or use of medications with associated preservatives which can lead to ocular surface toxicity in the long run, presence of any systemic inflammatory diseases, presence of any non-ocular symptoms like dryness of mouth, fatigue, joint pain, etc., prior punctal surgeries, or history of Bell's palsy. Ocular surface disease is potentially caused to reduce visual quality and thereby affect the measurements preoperatively. So even it is imperative to rule out the presence of non-visually significant ocular surface disease by careful examination. Patient should be counseled and prophylactically treated so that to minimize the exacerbations post-surgery. And in visually significant ocular surface disease, delaying the final measurements and postponing surgery till it is fully treated is recommended. Now moving on to the clinical examination, looking at the blink quality and quantity, presence of lag of thalamus, any form of exposure, the tear meniscus height, presence of foamy secretions, presence of lid margin changes, telangiectasias, or cylindrical dandruff should be done. Another important part of examination is lifting and pulling the upper lid, which is often underlooked, to rule out the presence of superior limbic keratoconjunctivitis, superior corneal scars, superior epithelial basement membrane dystrophies, lid laxity, or floppy eyelid syndrome. Moreover, it is imperative to identify patients with minor handy simple tools like Shermer's, TBUT, fluorescein staining. This is a short video of TBUT, which is quite simple to perform as an outpatient procedure to indeed surprise you with surface staining like this in a patient presenting with a normal ocular surface. Another important examination part is just pushing the lower lid margin to see the mebum quality and quantity with either finger or a cotton-tipped applicator to rule out presence of non-obvious MGD, which can be present without any inflammatory signs. Imaging of the meibomian gland by infrared topographer helps us analyzing the dilated, tortuous, or atrophic glands and help us staging the disease severity and anticipate response to treatment. Scoring of the meibomian gland dropouts can be done from a score to 0 to 3 to evaluate the presence or absence of these glands. Keratograph, which helps us in automatic calibration digital measurable meibomian glands and a thickness of less than 60 is direct indicator with a 90% specificity of MGD. Measurement of the tear non-invasive breakup time using a Placido-based rings projected on the cornea, and the image of these rings help us in guiding and providing a color coding map where green color or cooler colors indicates a normal TBUT. Tear osmolality is also of immense importance and is one of the most sensitive tools, where measurements higher than 307 milliosmoles demonstrate loss of homeostasis, and an interdifference between two eyes of more than 8 is a hallmark of tear instability. Moving on to clinical scenarios where a pterygium with a 4 mm encroachment over the cornea like this can surprise us with the astigmatism of 8 diopters, and after surgically removing it, can lead to an astigmatism value of 0.7 diopters with a regularization of the surface. Presence of recurrent corneal erosions identified by the presence of areas of negative staining on slit lamp examination, presence of epithelial basement membrane dystrophy with retroillumination techniques, and presence of punctate epithelial agents with different staining techniques help us in careful evaluation of these candidates. Presence of an inferior corneal scar like this, which might sound to be quite insignificant, can surprise us with the astigmatism of 10 diopters with a kissing bird-like pattern on the topography. Careful examination of these patients presenting with dystrophies and central cloudy dystrophy of Francois or a predesmate dystrophy, leaving out such candidates. Presence of superior corneal thinning with a ectatic cornea can surprise us on topography with a pattern of superior steepening and a thinning in the corresponding areas, and should always be ruled out by doing a tomography examination, and also to rule out any history of progressive disease. Presence of guttae on high illumination should definitely necessitate the need for doing a specular examination, where the presence or absence of cells can give us idea of the cell morphology, type, and the stage of the disease. Presence of microcystic edema on corneal examination with multiple areas of peripheral anterior synechiae can rule out presence of ICE syndrome with a specular image like this. Presence of tracts-like pattern on slit lamp evaluation carefully can help us in ruling out posterior polymorphous dystrophy. Any phakic edema should be taken very carefully to rule out the presence of either infectious etiology or even for presence of atypical variant of Fuchs. Pupillary abnormalities like the presence of coloboma, which can cause glare or photosensitivity, presence of atrophic iris, or presence of eccentric pupil should always be ruled out, because they can lead to glare and photosensitivity with increased chances of zonular dialysis and multifocal IOL dysfunction later on. Presence of aniridia should be looked for. In pseudoexfoliation, the presence of subtle zonular weakness, which can be unpredictable and progressive over time, can lead to decentration, aberrations, uncorrected visual acuity, and a significant loss of optical quality of vision thereby. Astigmatism less than 1.5 with a rule, and against the rule less than 0.75 should be carefully ruled out, and irregular astigmatism should always be evaluated with a tomography examination. Uveitic patients are not at all good candidates for multifocal IOLs. Retinal issues like RP and Stargardt disease should be ruled out. Maculopathy, diabetic ARMD, ERM can cause impaired vision, reduced contrast, and thereby difficulty in fundus visualization by the treating physician with these form of IOLs. So these are strict no's. Optic nerve head diseases can lead to decreased vision and contrast and restricted visual field. Presence of glaucoma suspects and ocular hypertensives with no disc or visual field damage who have been stable for a prolonged period of time should only be the selected candidates for multifocal IOL. Monocular performance in a one-eyed or a cataract surgery in one-eye patients would not achieve binocular summation, so should not be taken in. Low myopes have excellent uncorrected near vision, may face a photic phenomenon, should be carefully counseled so as to rule out, although they might adapt with time with neuroadaptation. Presence of hyperopia, the monofixation status should always be checked by a base-out prism, and these patients have disappointing visual function later on, so pre-op evaluation should be done for these patients. And a mild reduction in contrast sensitivity in amblyopes can produce a disproportionate reduction in visual function, so should be ruled out. History of prior surgery, especially in the form of post-refractive surgery, cornea itself becomes multifocal, and placing a multifocal IOL might lead to decreased contrast sensitivity and thereby decrease in visual function and increased in higher order aberrations. Evaluation of optical clarity by out. This will be dealt by Dr. Sagar Bhargav in detail in the next session. So to conclude, an aggressive and multifaceted approach to rapidly reverse OSD, thereby optimizing pre-op measurements, improving refractive outcomes, minimizing surgical delay, reducing post-op risk of infection, and thereby increasing overall patient satisfaction should be the target in all premium IOL candidates, which have a high chances of achieving a youthful form of vision.